Amigos, tenemos en este momento una información de última hora. Ustedes recuerdan el video que yo les subí ayer, donde el médico del expresidente Joe Biden mintió sobre el cáncer de próstata que se estaba desarrollando en este funcionario Joe Biden hace muchos años y que él decía que estaba en perfectas condiciones, tanto cognitivamente como físicamente. Y esto era mentira, ya que el ex médico personal de Barack Obama dice que un cáncer de próstata toma mucho tiempo en desarrollarse para llegar a los huesos, lo que significa que a Joe Biden se le estaba desarrollando esto en su cuerpo cuando estaba en la presidencia. Ahora resulta que James Comer pide comparecer al médico de la Casa Blanca de Joe Biden y a los ayudantes. Sí, señores, el representante James Comer pidió entrevistas a los 5 de los ex ayudantes del presidente Biden de la India con respecto a lo que describió como un esfuerzo para encubrir el deterioro cognitivo reportado por los líderes. James Comer ha solicitado declaraciones transcritas del médico de Joe Biden, Kevin O'Connor, el exdirector del Consejo de Política Doméstica y el ex asistente Anthony Bernal. Él dice lo siguiente: el pueblo estadounidense merece saber cuándo comenzó este declive de Joe Biden, hasta dónde progresó y quién estaba tomando decisiones críticas en su nombre, dijo en un comunicado el jueves. James Comer, quien se desempeña como presidente del Comité de Supervisión de la Cámara y Reforma Gubernamental de la Cámara de Representantes. Bueno, señores, resulta que Joe Biden estuvo en ausencia en la Casa Blanca 577 días. Biden estuvo de vacaciones 577 días fuera de sus deberes constitucionales. Lo que significa y se está rumorando es que probablemente Biden estaba en tratamiento de quimio, señor, estaba en tratamientos cancerígenos, pero nadie sabía nada o no se estaba divulgando en las redes sociales. Todo esto también se está acumulando con el nuevo libro que publicará Jake Tapper, un periodista de la CNN, donde habla del declive cognitivo de Joe Biden. Sí, señores, entonces esto es una información de última hora donde James Comer pide entrevistas personales con el médico personal del expresidente de Estados Unidos, Joe Biden. A continuación te voy a mostrar parte del segmento de Ronnie Jackson, médico personal de Donald Trump y ex médico personal de Barack Obama, donde él dice que esta enfermedad que tenía Biden no fue de la noche a la mañana. Esto tomó muchos años en desarrollarse y todo explotó la burbuja esta semana. Miren esto.
But my initial reaction, I think, was like everybody else. I could not believe that that this man had been in the White House for 4 years and had access to just unbelievable medical care, like just world-class medical care, the pinnacle of executive and concierge medicine, and that they could suddenly find out that he's got metastatic prostate cancer. Now, it's not like they just diagnosed him with prostate cancer and said, hey, he's got prostate cancer, we're going to deal with it. That happens all the time. But he had prostate cancer that's already left his prostate. It's metastasized all over his body into his bones. Prostate cancer grows extremely slowly. So that's taken years and years and years for that to happen.
Páralo aquí. El doctor Ronnie Jackson dice que el cáncer de próstata no sale de la noche a la mañana. Esto toma años, años y años desarrollarse en
And
su
so,
cuerpo.
like I said, with the access to the care he's had, how could that have not been previously diagnosed? How could he just now be getting diagnosed? I'm not sure I actually believe it, because they're saying that on Friday he got diagnosed, he got biopsied, and then then got worked up to discover that he had metastasis in his bones. I don't buy that. That didn't all happen on Friday. Something else is going on here. And then I was looking at some of the stuff yesterday, and I was watching the tickers on the TV, and I saw that he hadn't had a PSA since 2014. That's absolutely insane. So I was shocked like everybody else. And I will say, I know his doctor very well, and we'll talk about this in a minute, but, look, you said, no one deserves or no one wants to have their country led by somebody with cancer. No one wants to have their country led by someone with debilitating cognitive issues either. And that's what happened for 4 years. So they're really bad track record here from the medical standpoint on covering up medical issues with Joe Biden at the, and to the country's detriment.
So, all right. First off, let's cover the breaking news. At 6 p.m. yesterday, the Biden team finally broke their silence and said, Joe Biden, we definitely just found out about this on Friday. He hadn't had a very simple clinical test that cost about $1.50 that would have showed us that he had terminal prostate cancer, Mets to the bone, since 2014. Would you consider that malpractice, doctor?
That's absolutely malpractice. 100% that is malpractice, especially in the setting I just described. He's the president of the United States. People can talk about guidelines all they want. Those are guidelines. They don't dictate how you practice. He's the leader of the free world. It's a simple blood test. You get it. And you can get one every year, and you can see if they're going up or not. So you have trends, right? And that's really a large part of the value in the test is to look at the trends. Suddenly, it's still within normal range. It went from 2 to 4. Why did it do that? And you work it up. He has access to, he could have got MRIs. He could have got, he could have got ultrasounds of his prostate. There's 1,000 things they could have done if he had an elevated level to further work that up. There was no danger in getting the prostate, getting a PSA done and checking his prostate in that manner. They should have been doing that. They probably should have been doing digital rectal exams and other things too to screen in someone his age. Now, there was a mention also I found interesting. I saw that it was mentioned that in 2019, right, that was right before he became president, that Dr. O'Connor reported that he had an enlarged prostate, and he called it benign prostatic, hypertrophy. He said he was being treated for that, right, an enlarged prostate in 2019. But despite the fact that he had an enlarged prostate and he was having urinary symptoms probably at that time was probably what drove some of it. He still didn't get a PSA done. He still didn't get worked up for prostate cancer. So he probably had prostate cancer then. I mean, almost certainly he had prostate cancer then. And, and they observed his prostate was big and did nothing about it. Nothing. This is complete malpractice.
Ok, entonces, algo muy interesante que dice el médico Ronnie Jackson es que básicamente el médico de Joe Biden no se dio cuenta, o quizás sí se dio cuenta, estoy completamente seguro que sí se dio cuenta, que Biden se le estaba desarrollando un cáncer de próstata, pero lo llamó de otra manera y no se lo estaba tratando para que todo esto no saliera a la luz. Entonces, esto se podría llamar una negligencia médica totalmente. Esto es una negligencia médica. Entonces, cuando ya se sabe y se puede demostrar que eso es lo que se está haciendo en este momento con pruebas en manos, de que el médico descartó ciertas enfermedades que se estaban desarrollando en el cuerpo del presidente y se descartaron inmediatamente combatir con tratamientos, entra la negligencia médica. Entonces, ¿qué va a pasar aquí? ¿Será que el médico de Joe Biden será arrestado por una negligencia médica? Vamos a continuar escuchando
Congressman,
esta
as
entrevista.
I have referenced, and we're so thankful for your insights on this program, as you have come on over the past 4 years consistently to describe these problems from afar. But you used to diagnose up close. In fact, Kevin O'Connor, who's been Joe Biden's longtime doctor also business partner in the Biden crime
Yeah.
family. Unique to hire your business partner to be your doctor and physician. Seems like there should be a degree of separation there, but let's just talk about Kevin O'Connor. You knew him at the White House because you were the doctor for Barack Obama for the majority of his presidential term. This is correct, right? I have the timelines right here.
That's absolutely right. Look, Kevin O'Connor and I both got to the White House almost at the same time. He showed up about 6 months after I did in the Bush administration, in the last part of the Bush administration. And then whenever the President Bush left, he moved over and became the physician to the new vice president, which was Joe Biden, and I became the physician to the new president, which was Barack Obama. Technically, he worked for me. I signed his evaluations and stuff for most of his career there. Now, he's not a very, I mean, this doesn't surprise me. He's not, I wouldn't consider him like a very highly competent doctor to start with, right? I had a lot of issues with him. There were periods of time where I probably should have got rid of him.
¿Estás escuchando esto? ¿Ves la gravedad de la situación? Ronnie Jackson dice que él era médico de Obama, que es el que está en esta entrevista con Benny Johnson, mientras que O'Connor era el médico del vicepresidente, y entre estos dos médicos había un conflicto por la mala praxis que estaba haciendo el médico del vicepresidente de Estados Unidos en ese momento,
And I didn't.
Joe Biden.
And the reason I didn't was because he was part of the Biden family. I mean, he was beloved by Jill Biden, by Joe Biden. If I had tried to do that, it would not have worked. I would have just been told that's not happening, right? So anyways, he's extremely loyal to them. Like you said, who knows? He's probably been involved in some of their business dealings since he got out. I don't know the answer to that for sure. I think actually so there's some committees here in Congress that are looking into that, and we may find out, answers to those questions later on. I hope we do. But yeah, he was really close to the family, and I've said before, I don't think there's anything he wouldn't say or do to protect that family, or anything he wouldn't cover up. And I've been saying this for a long time because it didn't make any sense that he was covering up this cognitive issue so aggressively, right? And he was part of the cover-up. I mean, you look to certain people when you have medical issues or you have cognitive issues like this, and in the commander-in-chief and the president, it should be the physician, the first lady, the chief of staff. There are key people that it's their responsibility to say something about this, right? To bring this up and to figure out what to do about this. Because like you said, you can't have someone who's leading our country who's got cognitive issues like he had, or who's got terminal cancer like we know that he has now. And so I'm really disappointed, and I think I was going to tell you also, I was going to make the point, and I've made this point a little bit in some of the stuff I've said. People have said, well, look, what about the White House? The White House Medical Unit dropped the ball on this. The White House Medical Unit did not drop the ball. The White House Medical Unit is a phenomenal medical unit, and they have unbelievably great doctors, nurses, PAs, medics, corpsmen. They are great. It is not their job, and they really have no role. And I guarantee they had no role in Biden's health care. Whenever he was getting his physical exam done and deciding what they were going to check and what they weren't going to check. That was purely 100% the responsibility of the physician to the president, the appointed physician to the president, which is Kevin O'Connor. The White House Medical Unit is there to support him in whatever decisions he makes and help execute the plan. He comes up with the plan. The White House Medical Unit is there to travel with the president in case there's the president gets shot, or an IED hits the motorcade, or he has a heart attack, something like that. They are not involved in his primary care and involved in deciding what his physical exam does or does not look like. That is 100% the responsibility of one person. And I say this knowing, because that was my job when I was a physician to the president for President Obama, and when I was a physician to the president for President Trump. That was my job. And I decided what had to be done and what didn't need to be done. And I was the one that was supposed to go out and explain why I did certain things and why I didn't do other things. And I did that. I got up in front of the cameras in the press briefing room, and I briefed his physical for an hour and 20 minutes and answered every single question that the press asked me. That did not happen in this last administration. It was part of the cover-up. He didn't want to get out there and try to answer questions because he had no answers to the questions they were going to ask, because it was very obvious to everyone that his cognitive issues were being covered up.
Totalmente. Hay algo que me parece muy interesante aquí y quiero hacerte esa pregunta. ¿Alguna vez tú has visto al doctor de Joe Biden responder preguntas a los periodistas sobre la condición de salud del vicepresidente y el expresidente de Estados Unidos? ¿Alguna vez tuviste a Kevin O'Connor, respondiendo preguntas al pueblo estadounidense sobre la condición médica de Joe Biden? Nunca, señores. Nunca
And if
pasó.
he'd done that, maybe, I say maybe because I also say there was a big double standard, because the press had zero intellectual curiosity about anything involving Joe Biden's health. When his physical came out, they just, okay, we checked the box, his physical's out, move on. Nobody asked any questions. Why wasn't Sanjay Gupta, the medical correspondents at MSNBC, all these people that were drilling me in the press briefing room about, ridiculous stuff related to President Trump's physical, why weren't they asking questions about why did you not do a PSA, Dr. Connor? There was the press, they just looked the other way, just like they did with this cognitive stuff. So there's a lot of people to blame here. Kevin O'Connor, Dr. Kevin O'Connor is chief among them as his physician, because it was really his responsibility to find this, and to screen for this, and he didn't do it. And, now he's got terminal cancer. But, the people around him covered this up aggressively, and including the press. So I'm disappointed in how things have worked. I think that we have a new level of transparency right now. The physician that takes care of President Trump right now, Dr. Sean Barbabella, is a phenomenal physician. He's an emergency medicine doctor. He's as good as they come. He's got a great medical team around him in the White House medical unit, and they're going to take great care of President Trump. And we need to make sure that that in the future, to the extent that we can, and it's hard to do because the president gets to pick his doctor, nobody else does, and they picked Kevin O'Connor because he's a family friend and he's loyal, and they knew that they could tell him to say or do whatever and he would do it. So it's a bad situation overall.
I mean, what you've just said here is bombshell, and the insight that you've been able to shed on Kevin O'Connor, his quality as a physician, and then his closeness to the Biden family. It really does seem like a massive conflict of interest, and you say that this rises to the level of malpractice.
Yeah.
Because now you have something that is really bad for Joe Biden. It's now terminal cancer, and I mean, what should happen next to Kevin O'Connor? Should there be a full-scale investigation into this cover-up? It seems like at the very least, Congressman, that you are really toying with the constitutional republic here. They were trying to run by up through nearly August of last year. Yeah. August was when Kamala Harris took the mantle. They were trying to run Biden for another term.
Right. I mean, look, he would have got elected. If he'd have got elected, he would be president for the next 3.5 years. Right. And we'd find out what would have happened. Well, we would have found out that he has metastatic prostate cancer to his bones, and Kamala Harris would have been president. I mean, that's what would have happened. Right. So yeah, I mean, I don't know, what needs to happen as far as the investigation goes. I do think there needs to be an investigation on the cover up of the cognitive issue. I think that absolutely needs to take place, and I think that's going to take place. There are going to be committees in Congress that are looking into that to the cover, because that begs the big question of, if he wasn't cognitively fit, who was in? I mean, we know at this point that almost everything he signed during his 4 years was auto-pinned. So people want to know, like, did he really sign these bills? Did he sign these executive orders? Did he even know that they were happening? Or was somebody in the Oval Office, just running the show for him? Who was in charge at the White House? So those.
Totalmente, Ronnie Jackson, el médico Ronnie Jackson dice quién estaba firmando las órdenes ejecutivas de Joe Biden. Joe Biden firmaba las órdenes ejecutivas, absolutamente no, señores. Había alguien que estaba firmando las órdenes ejecutivas a través del autopen. La situación es la siguiente. ¿Quién es la persona que estaba liderando la administración anterior? Joe Biden no estaba en condiciones para liderar el país. Probablemente este señor se la pasaba dormido, señores, y había un doble de Joe Biden en la Casa Blanca. Nos pueden engañar. Estamos hablando del gobierno más poderoso del mundo, donde hasta la CIA, un agente de la CIA engañó a Bush con una máscara. ¿Se acuerdan de ese? ¿Vieron ese caso? Cuando la mujer experta, no recuerdo el nombre, estuvo en la oficina oval con una máscara, y el presidente de Estados Unidos en ese momento, Bush papá, sí, no se había dado cuenta que un agente de la CIA tenía una máscara puesta. Y cuando se la quitó fue aterrador, por supuesto. Pero, señores, esto tiene mucha tela que cortar. Y no nos sorprende que hasta el propio Joe Biden no estaba en la oficina oval, sino que era un doble. Imagínate. Vamos a seguir.
Questions that revolve around his cognitive issue that was covered up. Now, this medical issue is different. I mean, that I think that's medical malpractice. I think that's an issue that his family should be pretty upset about right now, right? One of their loved ones now has terminal cancer because medically he wasn't taken care of the way he should have been taken care of. I think that's more of an issue for the family right now, but it reinforces to the rest of us that there was a cover-up at the White House, and they didn't have any problem covering this stuff up.
So there's only two paths here: that the family was left completely in the dark and the doctor committed some type of medical malpractice by just not doing the simple test. And we know the Biden family is, not the brightest, and so maybe they really were left in the dark. The other pathway here is that they did know and that they covered it up. And we've had doctors on this program, and I'd just like to get your opinion on this in conclusion here, who've come on and said, listen, some of the treatments for prostate cancer lead to destruction of male testosterone, falling, weakness in your gait, inability to walk, inability to balance, leads to cognitive brain fog. It leads to an inability to really function. And also, maybe perhaps this is why Joe Biden took 577 days of vacation out of the White House in a secure location in Delaware that nobody could get even close to. Perhaps he was being treated for this secretly. What do you believe? What do you think about that?
Well, that's totally conceivable. I mean, nowadays, you get treated for prostate cancer with the radiation that they apply to your prostate, things of that nature, the chemotherapy, the Lupron that's suppresses the testosterone and those things. You can go get treated for prostate cancer nowadays, and it's an outpatient thing. You just go into a clinic. You spend 30 minutes, an hour there. They do what they got to do, and then you leave the same day, right? So it's totally possible that they did something like that at the White House, or they did something like that in Delaware or Camp David or some other location, and none of us actually knew about it. right? And to your point, part of the treatment is you provide a testosterone blocker like Lupron or something like that. And that completely wipes out testosterone in your body, where your body has no testosterone anymore, because some of these tumors are sensitive to the testosterone, and that's what makes them grow. So you try to block that. But as you know, if you don't have any testosterone, you're tired. You don't have any energy. You don't think as sharply as you otherwise would. I mean, most men that got to the point where their testosterone started going down a little bit know this. They know what I'm saying, right? And a lot of people are on, supplemental testosterone because it makes them feel better. It gives them more energy, right? So yeah, it's conceivable that all that was happening and we didn't know anything about it. And that's a crazy thing to say. In most circumstances, under normal circumstances, I wouldn't say that would be happening at the White House without us knowing about it. But I am totally comfortable saying that's a distinct possibility in this particular White House, because we know from his cognitive stuff that they are totally fine covering up anything and everything related to his health. And to your point, Joe Biden, Kevin O'Connor, the chief of staff, everybody that works in and around the Oval Office, their time at the White House and their influence and their authority that they have in their various jobs was directly related to him being the president of the United States. And I think there are people there that would have done anything to keep him in that role, even if he wasn't doing the job, so that they could maintain their influence, their power, and their authority. So and Jill Biden is chief among them. I think she wanted to be first lady more than she wanted her next breath when he first became president. And I think that continued.
I know you're up against a hard out, but very quickly here, just off of what you just said. So if they could do secret cancer treatments in Delaware, it does explain a lot of it does explain how urgent it was to get Biden up and out of DC, and how he would leave every Friday at like 1 p.m. Right. Biden was out into Delaware every weekend. The pardons, just quickly, 8,000 pardons, Congressman. That's a lot. That's that's obscene. It's blowing out history. Do you believe it's conceivable that Joe Biden knew anything about all of those pardons? Do you believe that there might be a larger scheme at play, potentially to pay for pardons, or to have a fraudulent system in order to run an auto pen through and get people pardoned?
Well, Jamie Comer and the Oversight Committee and some of the other committees are going to look into that. And I hope that we get some answers to that, because that is absolutely conceivable. The fact that everything was auto-penned, and the fact that we know that he was cognitively impaired seriously towards the end. When those pardons were signed, I mean, he was not functional. I mean, we all know this, right? And so you got to ask yourself, was he even involved in any of that? I think there's a reasonable chance that he wasn't, that people were making these decisions. They were getting requests for pardons. I don't know if they were getting paid for them or what was happening. I don't know if there was any kickbacks or anything like that, but I still believe that a lot of them were probably done without him even knowing about it.
Yeah, clearly.
And all the
¿Te estás dando cuenta la magnitud de la gravedad de la situación? El médico de Donald Trump está diciendo que estos 8,000 indultos presidenciales por Joe Biden, probablemente ni siquiera Joe Biden sabía qué estaba haciendo. O es más, 577 días. ¿Puedes creerlo? Biden estuvo de vacaciones 577 días fuera de la presidencia. Son casi 2 años. Son casi 2 años, señores. Y el término presidencial son 4 años. O sea, que quiere decir que Biden estuvo de vacaciones 2 años en Delaware. Se iba un viernes a la 1 de la tarde. y Biden firmó 8.000 indultos presidenciales. ¿Tú puedes creer que un señor que tiene más de 80 años pueda firmar 8.000 indultos presidenciales?
Destructive executive orders that he signed, that did so much damage to our country. Did he sign them? I don't know.
Any message for Jake Tapper in conclusion, Congressman?
Yeah, what a hypocrite, right? I mean, this is crazy. I mean, this guy's out running around promoting his book, acting like, he's revealing something that, that he found as an investigative journalist. And what a moron. This guy's part of the cover-up. This guy was covering up his cognitive stuff forever, right? And then he sees an opportunity to cut Biden's legs out from under him and make a bunch of money on this book. And he did. He's an opportunistic idiot. That's all I can say.